earthquakes, and the earthquakes were, in your area, were centered sort of around a very narrow area. And there were 5 injection wells within probably 1.5 miles to 2 miles of the earthquake center. And, you know, when those earthquakes happened in Youngstown, they shut down every well within 5 miles.
The one that happened here happened right after the quakes in Virginia.
Right.
And so some people may be confused. We supposedly felt a little bit of the Virginia thing too, but the ones right after that, what month was that? Anybody know? I mean, it was back in the spring. Was centered, I read, in the Reno area, Newport, Reno.
Right, but you weren't confused. I mean, citizens weren't confused. They knew what was going on.
Well, some people got
the
this mixed
agencies
up.
just the agencies just want you to think you're confused.
Oh.
But you're not.
That's relief.
All right, moving on to our next question. Does the Ohio Department of Natural Resources have adequate resources to monitor, inspect, and follow up on violations concerning injection wells now and in the future?
Okay, I'm just going to say a quick thing on that. When I was up for a records review in the Columbus office, I was looking at some outstanding violations on an oil and gas well. And I said to the person who was handling my public records request, you know, why aren't these being addressed? And the person who handles my public records request, they ended up assigning the public relations person to me. I guess I'm just special. I don't know what the deal is, but I get the public relations person. What she said to me was that we weren't going to have to worry about that, because in pretty short order, they were going to be hiring 2 inspectors for every county in the state of Ohio. And I said, how can you do that? I said, you're chronically understaffed, you don't have enough funding, how are you going to afford all of these new inspectors? And what she said to me is, oh, it's because of all the brine hauling fees that we're pulling in. So I want to ask you, it's not so much the number of people, I would ask, at the entire system, what happens when you have a regulatory agency that exists to issue permits to keep the brine flowing so that they can keep their job, so they can issue permits, so they can keep the brine flowing, so they can keep their job? Does anybody see a problem with that? Can anybody say conflict of interest? I have a problem with it.
I just want to address this real quickly. Well, maybe not so quickly.
I don't think we're good. I don't think your mic is on.
I agree.
Because when you don't use it, you sound like you're not.
Yeah, I agree, Rosemary. I don't think the mic was on the whole time.
Is it on? Can you hear me?
Now it is.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
I just have to stick it closer to my mouth, I guess. I have reviewed thousands and thousands and thousands of injection well and oil well reports probably in the past 2 months. And you have, like every injection well in Athens County should have been shut down and plugged between the year of 2000 and 2002. All of a sudden, they start operating these wells. And it's because ODNR is not paying attention. I'm sure that most of you have heard about the girl in Athens that was arrested recently because she chained herself to some cement barrels at this injection well. And then there was a water sample taken of the pit. And that's what the kids were asking for. They were asking ODNR to test this water. A young girl came up to me and asked me about the odors coming from this injection well. And Ohio EPA and ODNR told her, well, you have to let us know when you smell it so we can be right there, because we have to smell it too. And the girl turned around and she had to have been 7 months pregnant. And she told ODNR and Ohio EPA that she would go to that well and smell the odor. And I grabbed her and I begged her, please do not go to this well. You have no business being at this well. So if like like Lisa. No, Ohio EPA or ODNR does not have the staff to even follow what we've had, let alone what we're going to be subjected to. And also, ODNR has had to borrow money from the general fund to increase the staff that they already have. So the oil and gas industry is not even making Ohio enough money to pay for new staff.
I'm going to add a really short thing to this. I promise it will be short. When I asked for an emergency inspection of one of the wells that we had, because we had what looked to be about 80,000 barrels being brought into this well the last 6 weeks of the year. Okay, it was permitted to get 150 barrels a day, 200 barrels maximum. Okay, it looked like 80,000 based on the number of trucks and the volume that those trucks could hold, running 24/7, 24/7. What we found when I got the records, voluntarily reported no monitoring, was 53,000 barrels the last 6 weeks of the year. Now this was an old permit before this new law came in. This was an old injection well built to the old standards, okay? It's not a new well. 53,000 barrels in 6 weeks. Does that sound like 150 barrels a day? I asked for an emergency study there to check this out. There are cracks, there are leaks in the impoundment that are well documented, and this has not been addressed. The guy told me, Tom Tomastik, that the well had been shut down and I didn't need to worry about it. So 2 days later, I see the brine haulers coming in. So I get on the phone. I'm like, Mr. Tomastik, can you tell me when this well was shut down? Can you tell me when you expect it to reopen and what does that hinge on? And he said, oh, I made a mistake. It's actually another well that was shut down. It wasn't that well. The next day, the well was shut down. They sent in heavy equipment, they excavated it, they brought in gravel, truckload after truckload, and put it on top of that. And so I called them and I said, I want to see the emergency inspection report, and I want to see the soil testing that was done that forced them to remove all this dirt, and I want to know where the dirt went. If it was bad enough that they sent in heavy equipment to remove it. And they said, we didn't do an inspection, we're just supervising some surface site changes. The next day, they were hauling in more heavy equipment, they excavated it a second time, brought in fresh dirt, and relayed the gravel. Never did one batch of soil testing. That does not sound like a well-manned department to me. I would be curious for your input as an inspector.
Well, pardon me, in West Virginia, there were two completely different worlds. One world was the world of coal. The other was the world of oil and gas. And of course, as you all know, coal is king. And they pretty much get what they want. But somewhere along the line, because there was so much money flowing because of coal, we did have plenty enough inspectors. And speaking from experience, the majority of those inspectors were pretty dedicated guys. I've known some of them who have gone out on Thanksgiving at daybreak and hiked over a mountain because they suspected that a coal company was doing something illegal when there was no one watching. That's the good news. The bad news is the oil and gas department in the state of West Virginia is pitifully underfunded and undermanned. And now with Marcellus and Utica raising its head, and there's an awful lot of activity going on, we suddenly don't have anywhere near enough inspectors for oil and gas. So they put out a call for inspectors, lots of them. If you need a job, go to West Virginia, get a job as an oil and gas inspector. They'll take anybody, and here's why. You really should have a college degree and some experience. And they will pay you a whopping $35,000 a year, which includes your benefits. And here's the fun part. You can't talk them into any more because that's the law. The law caps the salary of the inspectors at $35,000. So we're not getting any inspectors, and until something is done in the West Virginia legislature, we're not going to get anything done. And that brings up a point that I want to say to you Ohioans. We can protest against the companies all we want. We're nothing more than a mosquito buzzing around their ear. They are in Columbus, they're in Charleston, they're in Washington, D.C., and they are whining and dining, and maybe some things I shouldn't even mention, all of the people who are making the laws, and they're making sure that those laws go in their favor. If you really want to get the attention of people who can help, you have got to get the attention of the politicians, as distasteful as that is. You've got to make them feel that there are votes in the balance. And I think that lobbying is not out of the question. If your DNR in Ohio is not adequately funded and manned, don't blame the DNR, because you're not going to get anywhere. And certainly don't blame the oil and gas companies. Go to Columbus and just harass the devil out of the guys who are making the laws and who are holding the purse strings. Ohio is not a poor state. They can put some money out there if they want to, but they have to want to. And the only thing that they understand is vote. So go in and make a lot of noise, get some petitions, hold up some signs, be an active citizen that gets these people's attention. And keep in mind that you still won't succeed. Probably 70–80% of the time, you'll be rebuffed. But if you can get 20% of them to listen to you, you could even write bills yourself, and it's not all the time, and introduce those bills into your legislature, and then lobby to get them passed. But I'm telling you, you really have to go to the politicians if you want to get anything done. And you've got to get their attention, and that's with votes. So demand that the money is out there to take care of you, because those agencies belong to you. They're there to protect your life and the lives of your children and grandchildren. But nobody's going to make anybody do anything. They're going to draw their salary and go home, unless somebody makes it really uncomfortable for them. And in the process, you'll find out who your friends are, and even more important, you'll find out who your enemies are. I lobbied in West Virginia for a year, and there's some people that all I have to say is I hope they don't step out in front of my car. I might miss that break. Hyperbole, please don't come and arrest me. But seriously, there are people who will be very blatant right to your face. I'm not going to support your cause. I think that you're being hysterical, that you want clean water to drink. How dare you expect your house not to fall down? There are other people who will be as genuinely concerned as your brother would be. So do it. I'm serious. Take this to Columbus. And
Step number
take it
one
loud.
would be getting rid of Andy Thompson here, who's sort of like you described.
Yes. I'll tell you, watching Ohio politics, since I live in Parkersburg, I'm right on the river, and I get to sort of have a ringside seat. Please don't take this wrong, but it makes me feel a little better about being in West Virginia. Because we're not the only ones with goofballs all over the place. And I see Ohio, and I always think of Ohio as being a lot more upscale than West Virginia. But when it comes to politics, you guys just have as many clunkers as we do.
You know what? Robert Chase, married a college petroleum engineering person, said at a forum, West Virginia is another country.
No, he acts like we've got another country to go to, and another earth to go to.
We have another
That's
question,
true.
Bill?
You know what? There is an old saying from the Cree, and I just love it, and I'm not going to get all of it right, but you'll get the gist of it. It's something to the effect of, when the last river is poisoned, when the last fish has been caught, when the last tree has been cut down, only then will we understand that you can't eat money. And I'll say you can't drink it either.
Thank you. And our next question is, in Ohio, how many more injection wells can we expect in the coming years?
There's no limits.
Is Ohio giving out permits?
Yes.
Are they at this particular day? Not yet, but they will be in the next week. Like we said, 27, it's actually 28, because a new application just came in this past week. There is the Marietta area is going to be slammed very hard with brine. And I'm not sure if any of you saw the press release from a company that's opening up a huge brine storage area in New Matamoros. They will have storage for 3.9 million gallons that they can store on surface, and they will be bringing it in by barge. So you can be bringing it in from all over the country. So Marietta, New Matamoros, citizens, wake up. Please wake up.
Well, it's 5 times more lucrative to bring it in from out of state.
Absolutely, absolutely.
They make more money off of an injection well than they do a fracking site. It's very lucrative for
And
the company.
this is, again, the only reason that this waste is not classified as hazardous is because of the power that the oil and gas industry have. The constituents are hazardous. There is radium-226. It is radioactive. You know, we all know that Ohio is huge in radon. Well, where do you think radon comes from? Radium-226. It's toxic. It's poisonous. And, you know, I work I'm sorry. I work with families whose children have cancer that live 2 miles from a class 1 well. Please do everything you can to protect your community and your children.
When she said they're hazardous, know that those constituent chemicals that are going into this are formally classified as hazardous waste. It's just because it's oil and gas waste that it's not getting the same treatment. That's the only difference.
And the wells don't receive the same protection as a class 1 well.
But they're getting sick by a class 1 well.
Are they going to be using this brine on our roads?
You do have some control over that, not on the highways, but on your local roads. Buckeye Forest Council, who Teresa is doing organizing with, and I'm on the board of directors, did a study a while back, and it's on the website. If you go to the Buckeye Forest Council, and you can see where at that time the individual counties and townships stood as to whether they would allow that brine waste or not. I think it's really important to pay attention to that because I've had complaints from communities who are saying that the brine trucks on their way to these injection wells are opening it up and letting it go. Now, I'm not saying what their motivation is, but what I'm saying is if they leave with a full tank and they get there with much less, that's all they're going to have to pay for. And so it's, I think, really important to look at local ordinances and rules about whether you're going to allow that to be dumped on your roads or not.
There is also, ODNR had the bright idea to classify some of this waste, some of this brine, as beneficial. And they have allowed a company, Duck Creek, they've come up with this product that's called Aqua Salina. And ODNR has exempted them from all of the brine rules, including the need for your local community to pass a resolution in support of this brine. There is no spreading requirements. It can come into any community. It has been tested. I have seen the test results. It is hazardous waste. It's high in benzene. But ODNR has exempted it. So be careful. And they're selling it for 23 cents a gallon.
What is it used for brine for the road?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, well, what they're going to tell you it's for is for either dust control, if it's not raining. If it is raining or it's icy, it's going to be to reduce hazardous road conditions. If anybody wants to see results from the West Virginia DEP on testing some of this brine, I pulled it up on my computer. We don't have Wi-Fi here, but I had it on a download on my computer. What I was amazed with was when I presented these results to the West Virginia DEP, along with quoting the Ohio Revised Code that gave the chief of the division the authority to test the waste, and asking him yet again to do it. He said that they could not make a decision based on the West Virginia DEP's results because there wasn't a chain of custody that went with it. Now, I'm sorry, I saw you roll your eyes, but that's kind of how I felt, that they're not even going to take the results at face value from their adjoining regulatory agency. I was kind of surprised by that.
I'm very surprised by it, and I also, pardon me, I very seriously doubt that there would not be a chain of custody. That is so basic when it comes to testing and analysis of anything. The chain of custody is the second step after providing for the proper containers. And having been with West Virginia with the DEP for almost 20 years, I can't imagine that anything would be done that there wouldn't be a chain of custody. And if he said that there wasn't one, it's because he conveniently lost it, or one didn't get sent to him and he didn't ask for it. But I think that that is a real cop-out.
I do too.
Maybe we should write a letter to DEP and tell them what Ohio said.
Hey, you guys, you're being dissed behind your back.
All right, we have time for one last question, unless anyone else, okay, we'll pass that to him.
I think I'm loud enough.
Yeah, okay, go ahead.
And actually, with the chain of custody thing, was that the sample that was taken from the app as well?
No,
Okay.
no. This, there are multiple tests, and they were done by the West Virginia DEP from the brine haulers. They were testing what was being hauled,
Okay.
and those were actually the samples that I quoted, where one of them showed a pH of 1.5. And so these were done by the regulatory agency, and it wasn't necessarily initially voluntarily. There were citizens who lobbied for that, and they worked long and hard to get that.
Okay.
So they will have their chain of custody. I will find it for
Okay,
you.
yeah, sorry about that. But, Mr. Henniger, you were talking about class 5 well injection.
Yes, sir.
Now, for Ohio, we have class 2 well injection as the only kind of well injection we have for waste disposal. And you can't do class 5 through old abandoned coal mines or actually put back into the wastewater. What are your feelings, knowing that class 2 wells have to stay, held to the Safe Drinking Water Act and the regulations put in place?
I think that any injection well, other than maybe a one, should be held to safe drinking water standards. I think that class 2 wells somewhere along the line when the regulations were being written, and here I'm speaking on national level, this is the federal EPA regulations, I find them to be extremely lax. They're every bit as dangerous as would be putting the same material into a class 5 well. But somewhere along the line, by the time we got to the class 5 wells, and I think the reason for this is the class 5 wells are considered sort of catch-all wells. If something is not defined as a class 1, 2, 3, back in the old days 4, well, that only left 5, so you'd call it that. And since nobody really had a lot of dogs in that hunt, it was easy enough to write pretty strict regulations about it. And in West Virginia, I have seen people bend the law around to where they were getting rid of things in a class 2 well because they could get rid of things in class 2 well that would never be allowed in class 5. My personal opinion is, I think it's wrong, and I think that the regulation should be changed. Class 2 wells should be as stringent as class 5. Does that answer?
Well, I believe they're more stringent than the class 5 wells. That's
Actually, they're not. Class 2 wells can inject hazardous waste that would not be allowed in a class 5 well.
But oil field injection is what?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, a lot of the stuff in oil field injection would never be allowed in class 5 well. A case in point would be petroleum hydrocarbons. Class 5 wells, you cannot inject any form of petroleum hydrocarbons in any amount, and you can't even use petroleum hydrocarbons in the process that produces the injectate. Whether it ever shows up in the injectate or not is immaterial. But for instance, if a coal preparation plant is using diesel fuel in its flotation cells, then that's legal, they can do that, but they can't inject in a class 5 well if they do it. And I got a lot of arguments. Well, you might not be. There's human error. There's machinery breakdown. There's all sorts of problems, spills. And the problem is, once you get a slug of diesel fuel underground in an aquifer, you're stuck with it. You can't say oops and get rid of it. So that's why the rule is you can't use any RCRA hazardous waste in any point of that waste stream in a class 5. But a lot of those same chemicals are allowed in tubes. And I just find that very disturbing. And I found people who played one against the other depending on what they wanted to get rid of.
All right, I guess we can take one more question, yes?
We live in Newport Township. We have had a minimum of 5 quakes within the last 2 years. We travel Route 7 almost daily. My husband and I have actually separately followed brine trucks to see where they are going. The question I have is, how do we get the location of the existing brine wells? How do we go about protesting the request for 2 more brine wells in Newport Township? So those are my two questions. And how do we also make Ohio live up to the standards of West Virginia so that we're not getting all this imported brine water, because we see trucks from West Virginia, Pennsylvania, Texas all the time, all the time.
I don't even know how that's financially feasible to be running trucks all the way up here from Texas.
Yeah.
I'm going to give you a phone number, and I'm going to give you an email address.
Okay.
The email address that you want to write to, because the very first step of protesting these things, I think, is to get a call into the ODNR and tell them that you want a public hearing, even though the way the law is currently written, they don't have to give you one if you ask for it. The way the law is currently written, it says that you have to submit comment in the 15-day comment period, and it has to be relevant to that permit. I think you've got some pretty relevant concerns if you've had 5 earthquakes in 2 years. They have to be relevant to that permit application. And so we need to get your hands on that permit application, which I have been trying to do for months. But they need to hear from more people than just me. They need to hear from people who live by these things, who are going to be directly impacted by them. And so I would not wait until you have that application for the permit in your hand. I would let them know right now that you have objections and you have concerns, and they're valid concerns. And I would submit within that under the Ohio Revised Code 149.43, that you are submitting a public records request to get the permit application, all of the relevant documents. If you give me your email address, I can send you a sample and you can cut and paste it. But I think it's really, really important to tell them, even before they get you the records, that you want to know where that thing stands in the public notice thing. Has the 15 days already started? Can we comment? Because that's one of the pieces of information they're not sharing with us, is where do these stand within the public notice process. And 15 days goes really, really fast. So the email address that you're going to write to is that minerals@dnr.state.oh.us. And it's Ohio, the public records number is what Teresa said, the Ohio Revised Code 149.43. And I'm going to give you a phone number. Here we go.
I would also recommend that if you have friendly local elected people, have them also ask for a public hearing, and have them also ask for copies of the applications.
And I would include in that your county commissioners. I would ask your county engineer if he's even aware that this thing is pending, to see how it's going to affect, everything that he oversees. Most of the county engineers are not even aware these things are going in. Trying to think who else would be good to include in that. Your mayor.
All local politicians.
Okay,
All,
so
in all of their faces.
yeah. So I don't have my glasses on, but here we go. It's 614. Oh, thank you. Okay.
Still can't see.
I'm getting kind of old for this. 614-265-6565. And you're going to get their hard-working voicemail machine, and it's going to give you some options on, I believe, oil and gas is number 3. But, and if you give me your email address, I will send you something that you can simply copy and paste from to make it easy.
I just had 2 quick thoughts I really want to share with you, and she reminded me. One is, you folks in Ohio need to work to get this 15-day comment period changed to 30 days.
Yep.
15 days is just ridiculous. Even Hillbilly over here, we have 30 days. And I don't think that's any too long. 15 days is just a scam, in my opinion, and you guys need to work to get the law changed. It's never easy, but it's definitely worthwhile. The other thing is, it hasn't been mentioned anywhere in any of the talks tonight, don't underestimate your power of FOIA. The Freedom of Information Act is a federal law, and they have 10 days to respond to you. And if you want to know where wells are and what permits are going on, and nobody will tell you